marina.
No, but
Yes.
I had a new or innovative idea. So I thought about this. So
Yeah,
you
the water.
so we could franchise owner of Sonic put it in the middle of the lake, like a boat track or something.
I don't know that too well.
But then I was like, well, we could start our own
We
restaurant.
could start
Our own restaurant.
Like they have that nest and we can go to that sandbar thing.
Yeah, but like it's like a floating restaurant and it has like that whole.
Is it a dock?
It's like a dock, but you
Yeah,
get
I'm gonna say something about Washington though. The people on the boats, most people on Washington that have boats, they don't know how to drive. They're smoking my
That's what
dog.
my dad said. And I was like, no,
I wanna
you have dock cans, like, and there's like pads on either side, so you drive up in the dock and stuff, you go through the drive-through.
Dude, if you can pull into a marina, you can pull up to it.
Yeah. It's right
I
from the
mean,
lake.
most people can't
I'm
pull
gonna say
into a
something,
marina.
how many people can pull up to a marina?
But that's just how fun. I can talk them through it. I can talk them through it to get close enough to me that I can grab the boat. I've done it a lot. And sometimes they run into the boat to the dock, but I mean, if they run into
It's
the
their
dock,
boat.
that's their boat. That's not my problem. I promise you, well, I'm not gonna say that. My grandpa lowered that dock, so the dock might fall apart before the boat, but it's very good luck.
Well, we all convinced them not to do it.
So yeah.
As long as my grandpa doesn't want the dock, we'll be okay.
We'll get point extra on the top.
I don't think that's any good. My grandpa might be a better option.
So how many businesses are listed now?
Like 6.
No, more like 20.
I think
I feel like we can combine a lot of the business.
Flash, are you wanting to do specifically?
It has to be whiskey, but we can try. Moonshine is
I think Washington.
definitely the moonshine.
I know, but Washington.
All right, I'll go ahead and start because I want to get done. So as we go, if you got questions out of chapter 1, I mean, since it's not due yet, if it's okay, maybe we could answer those next time. And do you have any questions in chapter 1? If not, I'll just go into chapter 2. And I have to apologize about last time. I signed up to help with the debate thing, and I thought it was at 4, and it was at 4, or actually it started at 3, but then turns out I had to go early because I had to take people and stuff, so it was kind of like, I did one class and rushed out. So chapter 2 starts in some sort of weird vision that you really don't even need to do, but I'm going to do it to begin with, and that is, you already know, because you had thermo, so you already know pressure is equal to some force over some little area. So he starts up with that. Okay. And he goes through it, spins down to, showing that. Then he starts talking about Pascal's law. Now, for some reason, all the books do this, and out of it, they produce the same thing. But I like to come up with this from a different viewpoint. So it's just like a wedge that you put under a door. And so if you draw a little wedge, and I don't really think I need the angle, but since he's got one, I'll just do it. And then what he does is in a slider, or in a thing a little bit further down, he says, hey, I've got pressure on the top, I got pressure on the left side, and I got pressure on the bottom. And for that matter, he didn't show it, but you got pressure on both ends, and they're shoving each other down. So he comes back. Okay, so let me show what he does, and then show what I think you should get out of this that he doesn't even talk about. And this is not uncommon. All the fluids textbooks have the same thing. He basically comes down, and somewhere through all this, he says, oh, if this thing is small enough, then pressure is pressure at a point. So in other words, if you're into it, it's like isotropic, meaning that it's independent of what direction you use. But really what you should get out of this, is that the pressure looks like this here. Pressure looks like this here. And it looks like this here. Which basically what you should get out of that is that there is an area direction that of a surface. And you may not know that you actually use this a lot, but you actually use it a ton. These areas. For example, if you go into CAD and you draw something, and then you say you draw an object looks like this, and then you drill a hole in it. So maybe it's a square thing, so it's 3 dimensions. So I'm drawing it in 2 dimensions, but it's 3 dimensions. And then there's a hole in this. What dictates that this is like, I'm just going to say it's aluminum. What dictates this is aluminum, and this is air, and this is air in your drawing? And what happens when you get inside your drawing, you look inside your drawing. When you're inside that drawing, depends on the CAD package. Some CAD packages won't let you do that, but others will let you get inside of it. When you get inside of it, it just looks like you're inside of this blob. Doesn't make sense. If you're outside, and say you put a light source here, what you'll get is a reflective surface. So let's say I'm going to draw the light is like right here, and here you are, and this is what you see. You see this upper surface, well, the light beams will hit this thing and go off. Light beams will come here and hit and go off that way. How do you know how they do this? There's a normal vector pointing out on every single surface here. Ooh, that's an N. Yeah, okay, that's a normal. So in fact, this tells you, okay, so you get a reflection right in your eye. Well, if you had a sunlight here, and what you would see is you'd probably hit that corner and it goes straight in your eye. So these would be the same angle. This would be the normal. So if you have it in a mode that's what's that called? The reflective rendering. You'll be able to see the light bulb as a reflection off of the surface. Another thing that happens is stereolithography files. STL files are what you use for 3D printers. And if you notice, if you ever dig into those, and we can look at them on the internet, but what they are is they're all a set of triangles. So let's say you had just a square surface here, and it's pointing at you. Well, what it will do is break it into 2 triangles. Okay, well, that's fine, but it also needs to know which is the outward direction. And so what it'll do is it'll give you these normals. I'll show you why this ends up being important in this in a minute. But if you go over here and you just do STL, because I'm too lazy to type stereolithography files, somewhere there is, it may take me a minute to kind of find, they move where a lot of these resources are. I'm just looking for, okay. I just want to find Wikipedia. I'll just do that. So here they are. If you look at them, they either come out as ASCII or binary. And if you write them out as ASCII, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a vertex 1, 2, and 3. And then what you're going to see is a normal that points either this way or that way. And that normal is the facet normal. That tells you, okay, where's the material, and where's no material. And then it'll know, okay, I got to build the layup on the inside of this. But you can also download a code called Mesh Grid that you can load. It's a free thing, and it'll just read these, and it will show you, and you can see the thing. Its basic purpose is to manipulate the STL and trying to make sure there's no gaps in it, or there's holes, or not 2 triangles that are laid on top of each other. All the codes that were originally doing this were kind of rough, and they would sometimes produce 2 or 3 triangles that were the same, and that would cause a problem. So this is embedded in everything. Now, why is it important? Why do I bring it up here? and that is, well, let me get to a problem and we'll look at why. But if you have a pressure is a scalar. Okay, it is true, pressure is the force divided by area. Now, if you think about that for a minute, there's something fundamentally wrong here. And that is, I have a pressure, which is a scalar, over F, which is actually a vector, over an area, which is actually another vector. Now, this you know is a vector. But if you divide a vector by some sort of scalar, you're going to get a vector out of it. So in fact, the area and the force, they have to be both vectors. And so the way to look at it is, the force is equal to the pressure times an area vector. Well, that's what I was talking about before, and I erased my triangle. So if you look at it, okay, usually the normals point out, and, oops, again, I'm getting these. Then, if you think about it, the area here, the area is equal to the area of that surface times the normal vector. So the area points out. So in fact, if you want to know the pressure, you sometimes have to put a negative in front of this. This is actually how they test stereolithography surfaces, that they're not double producing. And what I mean by that, let's say you take a cube, simplest form you could get, and if you'll be patient with me a minute, it may take me 30 minutes to draw a cube. Let's say you had a triangle sitting here, but you had some on the other side. So you had these triangles, and let's say this is the X direction. So let's take the triangles off the front, and the triangles off the back. So we'll say the triangles off the back are way back here, and they're like this. And so the triangles off the back would have their normal vectors pointing that way. The triangles off the front would have their normal vectors pointing this way. And let's say this is a really cube, and so in fact you had 1, 2, 3, 4. So of all the normal vectors, you only had 4 vectors that pointed along the X. Now let's say you said the area here is equal to 2, the area here is equal to 2, the area here is equal to 2, but the area here is equal to 1.98. There's something about a point that got moved. So what does it do? Sum of the forces in the X direction is equal to the area, we'll call this area 1, area 2, area 3, area 4. We'll say the area 1, it's in the normal in the X direction, times a pressure, that's a constant. It just puts in into the code, it'll just put in a 1. And then it'll say area 2 pressure minus area 3 minus area 4. So it simply sums up all these areas. It's supposed to get 0. If it doesn't get 0, the mesh grid will come back and say, oh, it needs to adjust it. Now, sometimes it will automatically adjust it by moving one of the points, because it could be the point was supposed to be here, but it got moved to right there, and so it's like that. And so it could be that. There could be several things that are wrong, but it uses this concept. Sum of the forces in the X direction, give a constant pressure around the whole stereolithography surface, and sum all the normals and the areas that are associated. How do you find the area? You get the area out of these components. You can show that you can take a triangle facet and just find the area real easy with a triangle. And then you take that, multiply it times the nx for one, ny, and nz. And you can just sum the forces, and it tells you whether it's a valid STL surface. Sometimes there could be double triangles. Just by accident, your code wrote this triangle, say, twice. If it wrote this triangle twice, it's going to have 5 triangles. It'll go through and sum the area in the X direction and say, ooh, something's really wrong here. And so, in fluid mechanics, We will use this a fair amount as well because this is actually in fluid statics. So I'll show you where we use it when we get to it. But the key point here I like to talk about is this. This, in fact, they're both vectors. If that's a scalar, these have, and this is a vector, it's got to be a vector too. He doesn't talk about it, but he gives you ample space to actually talk about it. He just doesn't, you know. But he's no different. All the other fluids book are the same. Okay, so then we'll say, okay, you've already seen this, so let me do this. Okay, nothing new. Gauge pressure versus absolute. Okay, the reason this is so important in what's that? Thermo is this. Okay, so that thing, that goofy equation, and there's versions that are not ideal gas law that are formed the same way. They just have different. They're just not linear. But the key is, do you ever put in 70 degrees Fahrenheit here? Or what is it? 460 and 70? What's that? 460 and 70. How about make it 40 degrees? So I can add 460 and 40. How about that? 460 and 40. Isn't that, okay, isn't that 500 degrees Rankine? I hope that is. I may have that wrong, but do you ever put that in there? You don't ever put this could be thought of, it's kind of weird, but it could be thought of as a gauge temperature. You don't ever see that statement, but that's kind of what it is. You're gauging it by how many degrees above freezing it is. Okay. So let's compare that to over here. Okay. Do you ever put in a gauge pressure here? Like 2 psi gauge. No, you always put 20 psi absolute. The reason you have to do that there is it just won't work. It's just not going to work if you do. So these have to be absolute. That has to be absolute. So in fact, there's a gauge, and the gauge pressure depends on generally 14.7 psi, and that is absolute for atmosphere. If you're everything is good and you're at sea level, that's no big storms, hurricanes, no big high pressure zones, low pressure zones. That's what you're looking at. So so he's saying, it's hard for me to read, but he's saying that that's the atmospheric pressure right there. I think that's ATM. So essentially, you can get a negative gauge pressure. It means you're below that. So say you have some sort of device. You pull a little vacuum up, like those vacuum sealers. You seal like your spaghetti in a bottle, and they sell you that thing for $200-300. It's nothing more than a vacuum pump, which you can get some vacuum pumps for like $30-40. So I have an actual vacuum pump instead of that. I just reach over and hit the switch, put that on there, and it sucks the air out. So the thing is, you can suck the air out, and I can't really ever get down to here, but I get pretty close. And at that point, I don't know that it would give me much advantage to taking my cereal or my spaghetti and drawing it to absolute zero. Just to keep the air from making Cheerios are really bad. If you leave Cheerios out a month and you go to chew them, they're not crunchy anymore. So I think potato chips, but I've never put potato chips in one of those. So you pull a vacuum on it and pull the air out. That's all great. So it's basically nothing more than absolute pressure is atmospheric plus the gauge. Nothing new to you. It's just, he's just showing you that. So what, you knew that already. You knew it in a different context. It was exactly the same concept. Actually, it was way more important in thermo. Here, it's not as important. Here's why. Most of the stuff we'll deal with is water, oil, things like that are mostly liquids. Most of the liquids, there is no, this doesn't exist for liquids. It doesn't work. It's not there. I mean, it doesn't. So you generally can calculate things on gauge pressure. Sometimes you find out it's more hassle to do atmospheric pressure than it is, absolute than it is gauge. Because then you got to start thinking, what's the pressure here? And then I got to add that to everything. Yeah, it's a waste of time. So you'll find that actually it's better to use the gauge pressure. Here he comes up with a bunch of equations. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to get our way around the equations and come right to the result with just a simple argument. Take a glass beaker, put it on a scale, and say this is area A and this is I'll say it's H. I'll take away the L and put H right there. Okay. So already last time we figured out there's this thing called gamma. It's the specific weight. In other words, it's the weight per unit volume of something. For water, it's 62.4. The digits can go up or down based on the temperature, but this is kind of the standard that most people do, pounds per cubic foot. So if you took a cubic foot of water, it's going to weigh 62.4 pounds. You know, if the temperature does change a little bit, it could change the weight a little bit, but not that much. You won't find it changing that much. So the question is, okay, we put this on a scale. Well, this is an awful looking scale, but here's your scale, here's your dial, has a needle, and you zero this thing out so that with the beaker that's perfectly cylindrical, the beaker is not weighed. You fill it with water, and the weight it's going to measure is going to be basically so many pounds. What is it going to be? It's going to be the gamma, the weight per unit volume, and the volume of this stuff is going to be the area times the H. So what you do is say your area is, I'm just making this up. Say you got a thing, so it's 1 foot, and the height's 1 foot. So that's 1, and that's 1, and that's 62.4. This becomes 62.4 pounds. Now let's make H and A variable, and let's take a philosophical argument. Something you've done in mechanics of materials that you only do in your brain, because in your right mind you would never do it. And that is, you go take a beam is sitting there, the car's driving over it, and you say, I'm going to slice this beam, and I'm going to look at the shear and the moment and the normal. But you're not actually slicing it. You don't go out with a hacksaw and slice it. What you do is in your mind you slice it, and you do something to the left ear to figure out the shear and the moment and the normal force. So we're going to do the same thing. This time we're going to take the beaker off, and I'm going to say I've got a big cylinder of water. This bottom of the beaker and this thing have to push back up on that water to hold it. So in fact, it has to have a pressure distribution. I'm not a great drawer, as you can see. And there's little vectors all in this. They're all coming up and they're pushing. And so this is just basically a pressure. Well, there's a force associated with it. Okay, the area gives you a direction down, so the pressure is pushing up. So, what is the force? Okay, so the force is just the pressure times the area. Now, right now, I know the area is going vertical, and so is it up here. So, it appears as though that the force pushing up on this water to keep it from falling has to be equal to the weight of the water above it. So this has to equal that. So in fact, you find out gamma AH is equal to the pressure times the area. If the area is the same up and down, these two can be canceled. And then what you have is this relationship, the pressure is equal to gamma times H. What are the implications of that thing? So first of all, does that make sense? And second, what's the implications? Let's say you're at the swimming pool and you have a crazy uncle, and he gives you the end of a garden hose. He throws a gold brick. It's a 20-foot deep pool, and here you are. He throws you the end of the garden hose, and he says, put that on your mouth and swim down and pick up that brick. So here you are. I'll try to do a decent drawing here. So here you are. Wait, your nose goes like that. Your eyes are here. It's like a Bart Simpson kind of thing. So this garden hose comes around your head, and it connects, and it's out here. And so here's your chin, and there's your lungs, big bag of air, and here's your back, and here's the rest of you. And this goes down your esophagus and goes into your lungs. Would you jump in the water with the garden hose and swim down 20 feet? Anybody a scuba diver? Okay, so you could answer the question. No, you wouldn't want to do that. And the reason you want to do that, you can notice this if you're next time you're at the pool. Just get up to right here and just inhale as much as you can, and then step out of the pool and inhale. And notice how much different it is. It's so easy to inhale. The reason being is because when you're down here, pressure is equal to gamma, or 62.4, times what I say, 20 feet. Oh gosh, I wish I'd have done something different. But I think I can multiply 2 times that. So about 122.8 pounds per foot squared. Okay, so now this is pounds per cubic foot, and this is a foot. So you get a pressure out of here, pounds per square foot. Pounds per foot squared. Did I say that right? Pounds per foot squared. Yeah. So, and I forgot a digit. So it's 20, not 2. So it's got to move out over, and it's got to be this. So it's 1,228 pounds per square foot. You know, I can imagine my lungs is about a square foot. I'm just making that up, but it probably is close to it. The outside of my chest is about, so that's 1,200 pounds pushing on my chest. That is not really a comfortable thing. It probably could end up breaking your lungs and stuff. Now, this is if you decided to breathe through the hose. If you held your breath and you go down under 20 foot of water, guess what happens to your lungs? They just shrink up. They shrink up to the point where the volume, okay. So what happens is, I don't know if it's exactly this, but it's close. Let's say it's isothermal. And so what happens is your pressure goes up to make this equal to the same number, constant on the right hand side. Volume has to go down. So you take a balloon, you stick it underwater, and as you stick it under deeper and deeper, it just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. It's when you decide to open your mouth and breathe the air through this tube. And then you're like, holy crap, you can't do it. And then suddenly you got a lower pressure in here because it's atmospheric. That's why they did these bell things. You ever see the bell? Old movies where the guy has the bell thing on, he has the big bricks around him, and he's walking around under the water, and there's a big hose. Well, I went to Michigan one time, and in Michigan there's a lot of water, especially if you look around it, the whole thing is covered with water. So anyway, they're having a marine kind of thing. They used to have lots of fish, lots of fishermen, all sorts of stuff like that. Well, anyway, they had one of these, and there's this big crank, maybe about this wide. There was a big wheel, and out of the wheel there was so the people are sitting there doing this, and there's one person on one side, and there's a dial, and the dial has the number of feet. And so there's a hose that goes down the water, and you can see bubbles coming out, and the guy's walking along on the bottom. And apparently, somebody told me later, I don't know if this is true, but if you signed a waiver, you could get in your outfit, and they would sit there and do that, and you could walk under there. I didn't go up, I just sort of watched the meter on the thing. I thought it was kind of cool. The scuba divers have a regulator on their back, or on the back of the tubes. So these things, they pump up to like 3,000 PSI. And then so I'm a bad drawer, so I'm sorry. And you got this regulator, and it pushes air in there. So what it does is it senses, it doesn't do this when I'm making stuff. I'm 20 foot underwater. So your pressure should be equal to, whatever. No, it just figures the pressure outside. And then it says, I should shove that same pressure down in the guy's lungs. And so what it does is try to equalize it. That's a bad description, but still, it's okay. And so it tries to keep the pressure in your lungs the same as the pressure regulator on the back of your head, or on the back of your back. Then there are people, what are they called, those? Okay, so they set up these ropes, free divers. Okay, so this is I like this. Guy gets out there and holds his breath, and then he grabs on this wire and it just goes, and yanks him down. And then at a certain point, I guess you flip a switch and they say, I'm about to die. Okay, yank you back up. I don't know if they do that. And so then they measure that depth, and the world champion is the one that didn't die. So, and apparently you can black out and stuff. I mean, I'd black out at 20 feet. I mean, I can't do stuff like that. It's just, the people that, they're experts all over the place. I mean, I couldn't, when you watched the football game yesterday, I couldn't do anything any of those guys were doing. But I think it's entertaining to watch because, you watch them and you're like, holy crap, look at what they're doing, So I'm the same way, I guess I could do that. I never did it. Maybe in a few years I might do it in my retirement, just go to a swimming pool. Oh, look, I did that, Oh, somebody put a fake fish in the swimming pool. Oh, that's neat, I don't know. But in essence, the key is that relationship. Now, what he does, so let me show you what he does. And there's nothing wrong with what he does. It's just, the other book, so he does that. So he comes up with this semi-differential equation where he does, Taylor series expansion about, when he's doing this, have you had heat transfer yet? When you take that, what's a Taylor series? Some function, God, I even forgot. F naught plus df dx times over n factorial. So n factorial, this is the first derivative. So you can do that. So say 1 over, how about just put 1 factorial? That's kind of stupid. Df, let's say you're expanding about y. dy delta y plus 1 over 2 factorial, second derivative f y delta y squared, which is, he didn't do this squared. Okay, then you get 1 over 3 factorial. I'm not even sure I have this, but that's a 3. So what happens is, and you can show this, if you actually have, say you have a functional value at some point, say 2, where that's that value. If you have the function, its slope, its second derivative, its third derivative, so on and so forth, you can actually get the entire function. And so a Taylor series expansion does this. It expands about a point, and then what it does is it truncates. It says, I'm going to remove the second order because as I shrink this shrinks down way faster than this, and I end up with a differential equation. So that's kind of what they do when they derive this. They do this in heat transfer as well, where they're taking a point, expanding about the point. So actually, this is the first order approximation of a Taylor series expansion about a point P, about some point Y for the P. And actually this P and that P should be the same. So, I don't know. Maybe it's a typo. Because down here, it looks the same, doesn't it? And so in heat transfer, they do that to get the del squared T, that's the equation for heat transfer. And so they do these Taylor series expansions about that to get the differential equation. Sometimes it always seemed hokey to me, because I kept thinking, why don't you take the next one? And you have to go deeper into math to find out why you don't. So he goes down through this. Okay, there's a problem to look at. And essentially, did he actually ever come up with that equation? Okay, so I don't see it. It's probably there. So in actuality, here's the way the equation should look. So here, usually that means it's a free surface, means air. And say, we're just going to say it's water. So this is a lake. And you want to know the pressure at this point. It's equal to P atmosphere, which is the atmosphere out here, plus H, which usually put the gamma in front, gamma of the substance you went through times H, you went down. So for absolute pressure, you get atmosphere plus the depth of water you went down under the water. I should have said that. So this is an equation that they put in there. They put this one for gauge, and then they put this one for absolute. I didn't see that one, so that's the reason I thought I would mention that. And so let's see if we don't care about compressible fluids. We're not going to deal with that. Measurement of static pressure. Okay, it will come up one day. All right. So a barometer, you've heard of the thing where, like, you turn on the news and they say, oh, barometric pressure today is 30. You've seen that before? So what the heck is that? Okay, so what they do is they take this kind of big jar. I mean, they don't do it anymore because they have a pressure meter to do this. But in the old days, they took a big jar, they took a tube. They took the tube and submerged it completely under, turned it up so that at the top it was vacuum. Oh, that's not the way. But too many C's and not enough U's. I'm not going to fix it. So, in any case, they say that. Okay. Well, if this you know, and by the way, this is not exactly true right here. This pressure at A is the vapor pressure of this fluid. Meaning, if you put water in here, you turn it upside down, you measure the pressure, and the temperature is 80 degrees. I think the vapor pressure at 80 degrees is like 0.25 psi. I think. I may be wrong about that. So it's actually not exactly zero. But if you put mercury in there and you look at the vapor pressure of mercury, it's like lots of zeros, lots of zeros and then a number. So it's okay. So then you want to know what pressure atmosphere is. So let's look at it like this. So imagine, I'm not a great drawer. Oh no, certainly not a great drawer. Okay, make a straight line and then that. Okay, there's a fish, right? Look like a fish? Okay, this one has wings. It's a flying fish. So when it flies through the air, it flies around, it doesn't experience any pressure change because, you go up or down. Now, if it flew up to 30,000 feet and back down, that's different. But we're talking about a flying fish. Flying fish probably can't fly more than 10 feet off of water. Then they have to get back in water. This one's a mercury-based flying fish, by the way. So then, all of a sudden, he hits the surface. So we're going to label that as a 1. And then he swims. When he's starting to swim, he experiences the pressure difference. And then he gets to B. So here's what's funny. He swam down here, but he swam back up the same distance. What do you think the pressure at B is? So it's kind of like this. If you swam down in water and swam back up to the same levels, what would the pressure be when you got there? The same as when you left, right? So if you stuck your head in water and you brought it back up somewhere else, you're going to experience the same pressure here as you were here. Well, what's the difference as if you were in a tube? If you swam down and back up here, this pressure at 3 is the same as 2 and the same as 1. Because you went down and you came back up the same distance. So the pressure at B equals to the pressure at 1, because you swam down, I don't know, a foot, and then you swam back up a foot. Now you're going to start swimming up again. Okay, so you swim up to A. Okay, so I'm going to start at B, I'm going to swim to A. I'm going to say, pressure at B, as I swim up, do I increase pressure or decrease it? Decrease it. So I decrease it, gamma of the substance I'm swimming through times the H, the distance I swam up to the top. And guess what? That pressure at the top was equal to 0. Now, technically, if you want to look at it from this standpoint, you would say, okay, I would say pressure A. So this is a traveling equation. That's the way I like to look at it. You start somewhere. You're swimming. You swim up through a fluid a certain distance. You arrive at A. You start at B. Swam up through the mercury a distance and arrive at A. Now, you can do the reverse. I start at A. I swim down through mercury, that distance, I arrive at B. Guess what? These are both the same equation. So it doesn't matter whether you go this direction or go that direction, you get the same equation. So now, you start looking at it and you say, hey, wait a minute. This is A, which you already told me was 0, and now you're telling me pressure at B is equal to gamma H. So the atmospheric pressure is actually, why is it atmospheric? Because that pressure and that pressure are the same. So, pressure atmospheric, in this case, is equal to gamma times H. Let's imagine you're swimming that this is truly mercury. Okay, mercury is about, I can't ever remember if it's 13.56 or 6.5 or whatever, so how about I just take halfway and say it's 13.6, how about that? 13 times heavier than water. Okay. Sg, specific gravity, gamma of H2O. So this is the gamma of mercury. And let's say, for instance, that I went 30 inches over 12. Okay, well, wait a minute. Let me move this, get this stuff off the way. So I went 30 inches over how many? 12 inches gives me 1 foot. So let's multiply that. 13.6, 62.4, 30 divided by 12. And let's see if this photo math thing will. It may not get that 12 on the bottom, by the way. And it might. I just don't know. It did. So it becomes 21.6. Now if you look at this, this is pounds per square foot. If I want to, I can take 21.6. I can look at a foot squared and 144 inches squared. And let's let that photo math do that one too. I'm so lazy, maybe it'll recognize it's equal. 14.73 PSI. So it turns out 30 inches of mercury on a barometer is about 14.7 PSI. So, the key to get out of this is the flying fish. He's flying through water, and he hits. He's taking a journey. And that's what you're doing in these manometer equations. You'll always take a journey through the manometer. And the equations are pretty simple in doing that. So it's and the manometers will look more and more complicated. I guess that's the easiest form of one. I don't even know if there's anything. Okay, here's a manometer. Okay, so this is kind of what they're going to look like, more like. I don't know what his manometer rule is, but we'll just solve some problems. Ooh, gateway timed out. Cool. Hey, wonder what that means. Let's refresh. I just want to see what. That kind of means the videos are coming from a different source. Did it come back up? Oh, not found. Reading an inclined manometer. The URL requested. Ooh, Apache Ubuntu server. Media player. Pearson.com port 80. Ooh. That's kind of interesting. And fun at the same time. So we'll come back and do lots of problems off this. There are other gauges. Boron gauge is like a balloon. So imagine this thing right here is a metal balloon. If you go get a tire gauge and you pull off the back, this is what you're going to see. If you got a water gauge, okay, so a water gauge will do this because you have water in it. If you let it freeze, it'll take that balloon and mess it up, so it won't read the right reading. Air doesn't have that because air doesn't freeze. You know, air will freeze if you get it to weigh, but it won't freeze when a front comes through and it's like -5 degrees. So all it does is it takes this balloon, it makes it, you know, as you pressurize it, it wants to straighten up. When it straightens up, this point right here moves back, and then there's a little gear that makes that gauge, you know, move over to the right pressure. And so what you'll notice on these is they're linear. The reason they're linear is because mechanics of material equations, until you get to a certain point, all those are linear. And so you'll get this linear dial right here. You can have pressure transducers. They're a little bit more expensive. I think we'll call it good there. And what I'll do, I'll just come back and find problem after problem to work with the manometers. And since he doesn't have the inclined surface video, I guess I'll talk about that. Maybe next time it'll be there. Maybe in 30 minutes it'll be there. Maybe 10 minutes it'll be there. Maybe already there. I don't know. You know, keeping track of a website is an incredibly intensive process, you know.
Do they have the physical copy of the Pearson's textbook over at the textbook brokers or at the bookstore?
I don't think so, to be honest with you. Actually, if you want a physical copy, the thing to do is what the student last semester did. He went out and bought, okay, I think we're in the 3rd edition. He went and bought the 1st edition. And it's a lot cheaper. So you can get a physical copy if you go back an edition. And the thing is,
I was going to get a new copy of it so I could get the access for it as well.
Oh, you can, okay. Well, I think you can do that too. I don't know how you do that though. You might want to.
I was just going to go over to textbook broker. Most of the time they put it on a little fucking cardboard thing. You just put it in with the book, and then you get the new book and everything. Open it up, and it has the access in there.
Oh, okay.
So,
You might ask them. I only turned in the ISBN for the card, but I think if you go, yeah, the little card that has the access code.
okay.
But I think if you go to Pearson, you can pay like an extra $5 and get the book and the access.
Okay.
So try that. I mean, if you go to the thing and log in, you'll find the student help for Pearson, and then just contact them, send them an email or give them a call. They'll be glad to get, because they love paper books. I mean, they love paper books.
I hate online books.
I do too, but the only reason I've done this is because all the homework.
Well, the homework and stuff is, I get it, but just having a physical copy of the book makes it a lot.
Oh yeah.
So.
And maybe I should have done that, but that extra $5-10, I thought, well, you know.
All right, I appreciate it.
Okay.
I was wanting to get a physical copy just to like keep on my shelf for future reference.
Oh, okay.
So is there not that much difference between first edition and third?
Matter of fact, if you really want, you can go out and buy the book from Munson, and you can get it for like $1.50. And it's the same material, it's just 2 chapters are switched.
Really?
Yeah.
From Munson?
Yeah, Munson.
Okay.
I used to use Munson, and then the reason I didn't is because, I mean, Munson actually is as good a book, if not better than this. I think the quality is about the same. But Munson, what happened is Munson retired, and then the 2 guys who wrote it are all retired, and then they handed it over to somebody else. So they're not continually maintaining that book, whereas this one they're maintaining. And so there wasn't, the access they had to that one was kind of sad. But, you know, as a matter of fact, I may have an old version of a Munson. You can have it if I can find it. I mean, I got books, I don't want any of them anymore. I'm tired. So I'll look and see. But, yeah, if you want it for future reference,
Yeah.
I'd say go get a Munson book, Munson.
I'll look that up then, because that's, you know.
Yeah. Some problem, you know, you'll be funny. You'll look at it and you'll say, crap, that's the same problem in Munson as this, you know. I mean, this first time I taught out of this last semester, and I'm like, all the problems are exactly the same. It's just different colors, different
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah, because I went on Amazon and other places. I was just looking at this book new.
Yeah.
It was like $211.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
Munson's
paying.
been through 9 editions. And I started teaching when it was the 3rd edition. I can't tell the difference between the 3rd edition and the 9th edition.
They're probably not that much
Yeah.
difference.
And so I'm like, just go buy for $1, $2, you can get the
Yeah.
other one. You know, it's just a racket.
Yeah.
I mean, I
it's
hate.
the same thing, like the accent.